Senator Bernie Sanders, independent from Vermont, hit Israel Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu on Sunday for how he is running Israel amid its war with the militant group Hamas. Sanders has repeatedly called on the U.S. to halt its military aid to Israel, citing the humanitarian crisis that has been unfolding in Gaza for months. He reiterated his call for an end to funding Israel on CBS's Face the Nation on Sunday. Year after year, we have provided billions of dollars in military aid to the government of Israel. Right now, you have a right-wing, extremist government under Netanyahu. There are plans to provide him with another $10 billion in unfettered military aid, he said. What you can say to Netanyahu, stop the slaughter, allow the massive amounts of humanitarian aid that we need to come in to feed the children, please, please, please. Oh, but by the way, if you don't do that, here's another $10 billion to continue the war, he added. CBS's Margaret Brennan then asked Sanders if he stands by his view that a full ceasefire with Hamas is unrealistic. Look, what you need right now is a ceasefire tomorrow so that the trucks, the massive amount of humanitarian aid, can come in to feed the people who are starving. But you have Hamas have dedicated themselves to destroying Israel. You have the Netanyahu government, which is dedicated to destroying Hamas, he said. I think at the end of the day, commands cannot be continuing to run Gaza, and the Netanyahu government cannot continue to run Israel if we're going to ever bring peace to that region, Sanders added. Well, I concur with the idea that the Netanyahu government is never, as long as they're in power and really right wing people control the Israeli government, you're not going to see any attempt at a policy change with regard to these different groups that are antagonistic to them. But my biggest problem with this comment from Sanders, along with a lot of other commentary that you tend to get from him nowadays, is that it's not going to be followed by an organized push to actually create change. I think about how a lot of articles came out in the last few years about, Sanders is one of Biden's main domestic policy advisors, and he has such an influence over him, and they've worked together on this, that, and the other. But when it comes to international issues, it doesn't really seem as if Sanders has any pull. And you could argue that maybe it's because Biden was on the Foreign Relations Committee, so he thinks, as someone who was a senator himself, that he knows more about this type of stuff than Sanders does. But either way you look at it, Sanders has a multitude of lawmakers in both the House and Senate, not as much in the Senate, but more so in the House, who could join him in going on some type of protest or series of protest relating to this policy. Like we talked about the Code Pink protesters that came to his office and were thrown out. He should have embraced those people. He should have said, hey, I maybe don't entirely support ceasefire because I think it's going to not have a long-term solution, but I'm all for humanitarian aid. I'm all for ending this conflict in whatever way is most possible to have the least casualties. But he didn't do that. So, I can sit here and side with him on is Israel's right-wing government not needing to continue to run that country, but it just doesn't seem as if we're going to get any real push by him to condemn to actually get those who either can stop the funding of Israel to by the U.S. to actually do anything about it. And it's just another example of the U.S. having blood on its hands. We get into these conflicts that have nothing to do with us. We try to play the whole saga of one side is bad and the other one is even worse, because even a lot of the more left-leaning lawmakers are still doing the support and side with Israel no matter what stance. So it just seems as like they really believe that to support Israel's right to exist, to support it as a country that is being attacked, you have to give it billions of dollars. And you don't. You can come out and say, hey, listen, I support Israel being a country that can exist. I support the people that live there who had nothing to do with any of the aggressions that Hamas felt they had to strike out against. But I don't back a right-wing apartheid state government that treats Palestinians and pretty much anyone who's not Israeli that lives over there like garbage. So it's just another one of these conflicts that's never going to end. And Netanyahu's going to be around for a while. Like, even if you get him out of office, you're still probably going to get some right-wing person to run Israel. This conflict is going to... It may very well possibly last forever, or certainly beyond my lifetime.